So what's good, TMG fam? It's your boy L, and I'm back with another reaction. How y'all feel? Welcome back to the channel. Salute, man. And we are starting off the night with 5 decades old disappearances solved by the internet. So for everybody who says, "Oh, the internet ain't no good for you," internet out here solving cases, bro. You know the internet and TMZ, it's just they two of the fastest, bro. You know what I mean? The internet gonna find you, like when they be like, please find this lady who did such and such, or this guy who did such and such today on camera. Please, they be done found his Facebook page, they be done found his Instagram page, they find his address, they find everything. You can't run from the internet these days, bro. So it has its pros and its cons. You know what I'm saying? So shout outs to the internet for solving these cases. So we're gonna get into this video. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. Before we get started, please make sure your home is secure, man. Make sure your alarm is on. Make sure your doors is locked and your windows are secure. All right? I want everybody to be safe. Let's check this video out.
Lavender Doe, Paulette Jaster, William Earl Moult, Strongsville Jane Doe, and Grateful Doe. These are 5 strangers that have 5 things in common. All 5 were young people with their best lives ahead of them, but suddenly, all of them disappeared from the lives of their families, never to return. All 5 would later be found to have died mysterious deaths and would wait decades before their cases were solved. Interestingly, all 5 cases were solved by ordinary people armed with the power of the internet. Their respective families suffered, waiting for the police to find their loved ones. The slow days turned into months, and the months into years, and the years into decades, until ordinary people took it upon themselves to help these families get the closure that they deserved. These are their stories. Lavender Doe. On the 29th of October 2006, 2 men going for a jog in the woods near an oil field stumbled upon the body of a white female, probably aged between 17 to 25. The body was found beside a pile of burning bush. When investigators got to the scene, they were able to recover a purple sweater and a pair of jeans from her. She had $40 in her pocket. The time of her death was set between 8:15 p.m. and 10 p.m. the previous day.
That always fascinates me, how they can figure that out, the time of death, how, you know what I mean, just drum up that timeline like that. I'm always in shock of how they're able to do that.
The victim weighed around 120 pounds. She was 5 feet 3 inches. Her hair was either strawberry blonde or light brown, might have had red highlights, but was definitely blonde, and it was determined that she must have come from a middle-class household. There was, however, one quality that the victim had that made her very peculiar. She had a perfect set of teeth with no cavities or fillings. She even had 2 of her baby teeth still intact. As her mystery became more popular, she would come to be known as the victim with the perfect set of teeth. Back to the crime scene, an empty gasoline can was recovered.
We couldn't find out, like, something else. I don't know. I kind of find that a little bit offensive to the family. You know what I mean? I don't know why. And not a big. I'm just saying, like, the victim with the perfect set of teeth. Well, huh? What are you implying? My bad. Maybe that's a little petty for me, but.
And because of the nature of her to the crime scene, an empty gasoline can was recovered. And because of the nature of her death, it was ruled as a homicide. To make matters even worse, semen was found after a forensic examination was conducted. Residents of the area testified that there were many suspicious people in the area where her body was found, with some even referring to the location as a killing ground. Efforts were made to reconstruct her face, but because of the degree of burns, the process had to be attempted 3 times by a forensic artist. The police were befuddled by her case. All efforts to identify Lavender Doe proved fruitless because her dental records and DNA had no matches on the system. Also, there was no missing person notice by anyone that matched the Lavender Doe. For several years, this case remained a mystery to both the police and the general public. It wasn't until 2007 when a suspect in the case emerged. It was a man named Joseph Wayne Burnett, who was 36 at the time and was already a convicted sex offender. Already in prison for another crime, the police announced their suspicions that he was the murderer. Burnett vehemently denied his involvement in the rape and murder of the women, but the police still saw him as a suspect. However, they couldn't find a direct link between him and the crime. It would take another 8 years.
Sound like we headed towards the DNA is going to be the deciding factor that proves it's him. And you're just moving towards the time of when we have that technology. You know what I'm saying? That's what it's seeming like it's headed towards right now.
January 2014, for another interesting clue to emerge. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released a digital composite image produced from a CT scan of her, all thanks to the advancement in technology since 2006. After the release of the reconstruction, the mother of missing 23-year-old Brandy Wells, her daughter, who had mysteriously disappeared after going out to a nightclub in Longview, Texas in August 2006, contacted authorities because she felt the composite bore a striking resemblance to her missing daughter. However, after DNA testing, the possibilities of that were eliminated and the body remained unidentified. After some years of remaining unidentified, Lavender Doe's...
Like, imagine the emotion that the family is going through. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you jumping at every opportunity to get some closure, and every time you're met at a dead end, another dead end, another dead end, bro. That could take years off of your life. You know what I mean? That type of stress, it takes years off of your life, bro. Like, prayers to the family. Man.
Body was buried in Longview. The case had gone cold. It wasn't until 2018 that things started to dramatically get better for the Lavender Doe. In August of that same year, Burnett suddenly confessed to the killing of Lavender Doe, along with a fresh murder of Felicia Pearson. He would later go on to say that Lavender Doe, his victim, had tried selling him items from a magazine he refused. She would later ask to enter his car where they would have sex. Afterward, Burnett said she stole $40 from him, which pissed him off, and in retaliation, he murdered her. Also, a nonprofit organization called DNA Doe Project, run by civilians.
She stole $40 from you, right? Which is odd, because when they found her body, what did they find? $40, right? Something's just weird about that. I don't know. Because you didn't even take it back. If you cared so much about it, you didn't even take it back once you did what you did. So I find that kind of hard to believe that all of this was over $40. Nah.
A nonprofit organization called DNA Doe Project, run by civilians, took it upon themselves to try to uncover Lavender's identity and hopefully reconnect her with her family. They successfully raised $1,400 for a DNA profile analysis for genealogy research that would determine both her ethnicity and ancestry. It proved successful, and soon they were able to identify that Doe had Czech ancestry and also that she had a first cousin who lived in East Texas, 30 miles from where her body was originally found. After enough digging and research and persistence, the DNA Doe Project was finally able to identify Lavender Doe and announced that her identity would be released after Burnett's trial. It was found that her name was Donna Dodd. Her mother had left her when she was a baby and died in 2006, the same year that her daughter was also tragically murdered. Her father was homeless, and she had lived with her stepmother for a while before staying in Florida, where she lived with her half-siblings. In 2000, she would leave her family and join a door-to-door magazine sales team that would lure people in with the promise of adventure, but was actually a human trafficking organization.
Bro, I used to tell people all the time, stuff like that is dangerous. Jobs like that is dangerous. Another one I did, I never did this, but I did like the Census Bureau. and you going up to people's door randomly to their doors and stuff, trying to, man, I never really could get into that. You know, they dangle the money in front of you, and at the time, you kind of strapped for cash, so you willing to do it, man. But it was always an uneasy feeling. It was always an uneasy feeling. I'd have rather been throwing phone books into people's yard instead of doing that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that knocking on people's doors and trying to sell something like that, it's always dangerous, especially for women as well.
That kept young people hooked on drugs. It was during this time that Burnett encountered Dana at a Walmart parking lot and where she met her premature death. The families of Dana Dodd decided to leave her body where it had originally been buried and replaced her gravestone with a new one that had her name and birth date. In December 2020, Burnett was sentenced to 50 years for the murder of both Dodd and Felicia Pearson. Paulette Jaster. In the year 1954, in the small city of Davison, Michigan, a pretty, lively, and lovable young girl named Paulette Jaster was born into a ranch-dwelling family. Her charming qualities endeared her to everyone who met her, and she was generally loved by those who knew her at the time. To the delight of her family and friends, Paulette would later leave Davison City in her late teens to study at Central Michigan University, but after just a semester in, Paulette dropped out. No one knew why at the time, and she refused to give anyone a reason for her actions. In the following years, things began to go from bad to worse to plain strange for her as she began to suffer from a serious mental condition. She also went through a terrible breakup with her high school sweetheart that made her condition even worse. She started making even more erratic decisions, like quitting her well-paying job at the Chevrolet plant in Flint, Michigan. And by the year 1974, when she was just 20, her friends and family began to suspect she begun taking marijuana. Her erratic behavior alienated her from friends and placed a wedge between her and her family.
She on a serious downward spiral, you could tell, just by what they're saying. Yeah.
3 years later, in 1974, Paulette will tell the Davison police that there were people that were trying to kill her, and in her words, use her mind. Eventually, the police petitioned the state, claiming that Paulette was too mentally ill to care for herself, and it was decided in a county probate court that she should be sent to a state hospital for evaluation and treatment. At that time in the 1970s, mental illness was seen as a character defect and not an actual illness that could be treated or managed. One moment, Paulette, age 23 at the time, was in the state hospital. The next, she had signed herself out of the hospital, staying there for less than 2 months. In 1978, she went home just before Christmas and got into a fight with her father before leaving Michigan for Florida, where her family had relatives. In April of that same year, Paulette would return for her mother's birthday. She would, however, leave 2 days after the birthday and would never be seen again.
It's starting to seem like she was just like the black sheep of the family. Like, you know what I mean? We all got that family member. You know something's going to happen when they come in town, or it ain't going to go right. Not saying it's always necessarily their fault, but it always seems like they either get into it, something happens, and you can almost set your watch by it, and then they're gone. You ain't going to see them for a while. You knew that last whatever was going to keep them away from the family. You know what I mean? So it seems like that's how she was.
At the time of her disappearance, she was last seen walking towards Interstate 69 with an Army-style duffel bag in her hands. When her family did not hear from her after some time, they reported her missing. For almost a year, police couldn't find any leads until Social Security records showed that Paulette had earned $319 while working at a Walgreens lunch counter in Mesa, Arizona. After this, there would be no leads, and the case would eventually gather dust and grow cold for almost 3 years. In 1983, her mother received a tip that Paulette was now in Florida and was also in trouble. There were numerous sightings of her from different sources, but none of them were confirmed. It is at this point that things started to get bizarre. Paulette's sister, began receiving strange calls from an anonymous caller who would ring in, not say anything, then drop the call. At the time, Paulette was convinced that it was her sister. But after a while, this would stop all of a sudden and cause the case to go cold again. Another 7 years went by, and in 1996, the Michigan State Police issued a new nationwide missing persons bulletin for any information regarding Paulette in a bid to revive the case and find a lead. Hope seemed to shine its soft light when a call came in, claiming that a Blue Earth, Minnesota Jane Doe could be Paulette. The body was taken for forensic testing, and it turned out not to be Paulette, putting a clog once again into the wheel of the case. Despite the police attempt to revive the case, nothing came forth. There were no leads, calls, or sightings. Everything just went quiet. But her family never stopped searching, and it didn't take long before another light at the end of a tunnel began to surface. The victim's siblings began searching missing persons websites. They stumbled on one called the Web Sleuths, which is a forum where registered users can discuss and classify information related to crimes, trials, and unsolved murders, which they would then try to solve. Eventually, the site would lead them to a woman called Debbie Saunders, whose alias on Web Sleuths was Houston Mom. With her help, they were able to identify a victim of a hit-and-run case from 1980 that bore strong similarities to Paulette. When she submitted her findings to forensic scientist Dr. Sharon M. Derrick, she also recognized these similarities, but found it difficult to run a test without fingerprints or DNA, causing her to resort to unorthodox methods for identification. Paulette's dental charts were cross-referenced with those of the hit-and-run victim, and an incomplete match was made because of the lack of x-rays. But interestingly, it was a match nonetheless. While scanning an autopsy report, Derrick noticed 2 freckles on the woman's cheek, which when compared with 1 freckle near Paulette's right eye, create a match that was strong enough for Paulette to be an absolute match. Paulette's body had finally been found almost 34 years after her disappearance. It was discovered that Paulette had hitched a ride from Arizona to Houston and was seen getting out of an 18-wheeler at a truck stop on Interstate 10 shortly before midnight on March 28, 1980. There was no ID on Paulette when an intoxicated driver swerved his car into Paulette, killing her in the process. There was one tiny detail that had slowed down investigators over the years. The duffel bag that witnesses had reported seeing on Paulette was abandoned in a trucker's cab and remained in his possession in the intervening years.
Wait, what? Hold on. He kept the... Like, don't even get me started on hit and runs, bro.
Trucker's cab, and that witnesses had reported seeing on Paulette was abandoned in a trucker's cab and remained in his possession in the intervening years. This detail was abandoned and never followed through. The police never collected the bag from the trucker. If they had, all they needed for identification would have easily been found in the bag, and the family wouldn't have had to wait for almost 4 decades to find closure. The family also found that the young woman had been hit by Robert S. Couch, who was 23 at the time. He was arrested and charged for involuntary manslaughter and failure to stop and render aid. He pleaded guilty and was placed on probation for 5 years in July of 1980. They also found...
Y'all heard that right, didn't y'all? Did I hear that wrong, or did I just hear... Whoa. What was his verdict?
Manslaughter and failure to stop. He was arrested and charged for involuntary manslaughter and failure to stop and render aid. He pleaded guilty and was placed on probation for 5 years in July of 1980. They also found that their daughter had been buried in Houston under the name Jane.
Man, that gotta be that gotta be wrong. That can't be. That can't be. It's gotta be more. I'm not sitting here believing that's all he got for manslaughter, hit and run, failure to render aid, or however they said it, worded it. 5 years probation. Who did he know? Who's his family? He got to be a Rockefeller or something.
Doe and a case number. Eventually, the family replaced this with a plaque that positively identified her as Paulette Doster, finally bringing a close to a long and painful case. Strongsville Jane Doe. At a young age, Linda Murray Pagano's parents divorced. After a few years, her mother remarried a man named Brian Claflin, but that also didn't go well, and so she left him after a few months together. Linda had 2 siblings, a brother and a sister, named Mike and Cheryl Pagano, respectively. They had lived with Brian Claflin, but he was abusive towards them, so they had to move in to live with their mother's new boyfriend. According to Linda's siblings, Brian was abusive towards everyone except Linda, and since Linda wasn't so fond of her mother's new boyfriend, she decided to stay with Brian since they got along so well. On the 30th of August, Linda drove her Mustang with her boyfriend to Cleveland to attend a World Series concert at the old stadium. She didn't return home that night, and when she returned the next morning, she got into a fight with Brian, which caused him to kick her out of his house. After that event, strangely, Linda was never seen again. The day after, Brian called Linda's mother and told her that he was looking for Linda. After calling friends and family without results, the police were notified, and the police treated the case as that of a runaway. However, this did not stop the family from continuing their search for Linda. On the 5th of February 1975, 3 boys found skeletal remains along the bank of a rocky river in Strongsville, which is now known as Stream Run Reservation. No physical evidence was retrieved at the scene of the crime, and an autopsy would reveal that the skeleton was that of a white female in her late teens or early 20s. Further findings identified that the unknown woman had been shot in the head, a discovery that led to the case being classified as a homicide.
Y'all know my theory on that. Anytime it's something like that, it's something personal. You know what I mean? Or it don't always have to be, but normally about 70-75% of the time, bro, it feels to me like it's personal. When somebody do that to you, yeah, it seems personal.
When Linda's brother, Mike Pagano, heard of the report on TV, he wondered if the unknown woman could be his long-lost sister. Immediately, he called the police, and a woman answered the phone. When Mike explained the situation to her and gave her a description of his sister, the woman responded, "Oh no, this girl is a little older and maybe a little taller. Oh no, that's not your sister." This spelled the end of the case for many years.
How do you didn't even look? I just gave you some information, and some information I might not be giving the best information depending on the current emotional state I'm in. So I might not have gave you the best description, but you automatically gonna say no and dismiss it without even trying to get some more information to possibly look into it and see? Bro, this is not a lost bag at an airport or something like that, or a lost and found, fam. No, that's not yours. That's something totally different. No, fam, this is a person. Just take a second and just look for me, please. Like, what? They're treating her like lost luggage.
The police couldn't identify the skeleton with the hole in her skull, and the Pagano family could not find their sister. Decades later, the Strongsville Jane Doe, as she had come to be known, was finally buried at Potter's Field Memorial Gardens in Highland Hills. However, in 2015, a 22-year-old amateur sleuth and genealogy researcher named Christina Skates, while looking through the Highland Park Cemetery records for an ancestor of hers, stumbled upon a grave that had no name. It belonged to an unidentified white female, and this immediately piqued her interest. She kicked into high gear and began going through libraries before she found an old newspaper clipping about the murder of the Strongville's Jane Doe. She was relentless in her search for answers and called as many detectives as she could until they sent her a digital copy of the case files. Armed with the case files and a burning desire to find the truth, Christina Skates took to Reddit and submitted all of her findings under a subreddit called r/unresolved mysteries. She went by the alias Call Me Ice. The case went viral soon after and made its way to Web Sleuth and later involved a user who also worked as a forensic artist. His name was Carl Kopel, and he was quite respected by the forensic community for his ability to create realistic, accurate, and compelling digital recreations for victims. It so happened that the victim was not listed on any public database or any of the Doe networks. Skates decided to contact the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office about the case, and soon enough, the case was entered into a federal database for missing and unidentified persons. As soon as this was done, the police made a potential link, and on June 29, 2018, through DNA testing, a link was made to Mike and Cheryl Pagano, which confirmed that the remains belong to Linda Pagano. Efforts are now being made to determine who might have been Linda Pagano's killer. The last suspect.
I had to call that station back. You know, the one where the lady dismissed me? Fam, none of them words I be using be church words. I'll tell you that much. Nah, fam, you about to catch an onslaught.
Would have been.
And then I'm gonna apologize at the end, you know what I mean? Because it's really not but I'm, you know what I mean? You didn't have to dismiss me like that though.
And Brian Clayton, her stepfather, but he died in 1990. Grateful Doe. On the 26th of June, 1995, a 21-year-old student whose name was Michael Eric Hager was traveling to his mother's home in Iman, South Carolina from Fairfax, Virginia. On his way, he picked up a 19-year-old hitchhiker with shaggy blonde hair that was not unlike his own.
Y'all know how I feel about hitchhikers. You know what I mean? It ain't that I'm looking down on you. It ain't that. No, it's situations probably like what we about to hear right now is the reason why, fam. I just can't do it. You know what I mean? It ain't I don't feel sorry for you. It ain't even that I don't want to help you. It's that this or something that it could be a possible outcome of what we may be about to hear now.
They both loved Grateful Dead, a popular band at the time, and this, it was believed, was what made them get acquainted easily. They both rode in Michael's Volkswagen car until a point during the drive, Michael fell asleep at the wheel, lost control, and drove off course, crashing into some trees along the U.S. Route 58 in Greensville County. They both suffered severe head injuries, and they both died instantly.
Sheesh.
Michael was
okay, so maybe it wasn't what I was thinking, but sheesh.
Easily identified, but the identity of the hitchhiker beside him was a complete mystery, all thanks to his lack of ID. Amongst the hitchhiker's belongings was a lighter, a few coins, and 2 scalped ticket stubs to a Grateful Dead concert. One ticket was for the 24th of June, 1994, and the other was for the 25th of June, 1995. There was also an apology/farewell note that read, "Sorry, we had to go, see you around. Call me, Caroline T. and Caroline O." The note had a phone number that had no area code, so it turned out to be a dead end since there was no way to identify him. Fingerprints analysis proved unsuccessful, and photographs could not be released because of the number of cuts on his face. He was named Grateful Doe in reference to his love of the Grateful Dead band. With no leads and no missing reports that matched the victim, his case grew cold. In the intervening years, composite sketches and facial reconstructions became more popular. A facial reconstruction was finally created by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in 2012, and this would serve as the primary face for investigation. 20 years after the accident, an Australian Redditor named Leila Betts, who went by the alias Zombie Gray, was getting into unsolved mysteries. She was not particularly interested in solving these cases, but when she stumbled upon the Grateful Doe case, she just knew she had to do something. She uploaded a post that read, "Do you recognize me? I have been without my name for nearly 20 years." The post went viral, and soon enough, she was in contact with the law enforcement and curious individuals who wanted to help. One day, She got a message from a guy named Steve, who recognized the guy as an old roommate he once had when he was in Illinois. He said the man's name was Jason, but he couldn't recall his surname. Steve would describe Jason as a young, free-spirited surfer who went through life as it came. He also said that Jason was a staunch Deadhead fan.
Not the profile or anything, but he do fit that description with the hair and the look and everything. The recomposite look, or however you say it, reconstructed look that they did. He did look like a surfer though.
Had worked at the local McDonald's, and they had discussions about atheism and hallucinogens. The final statement that felt like a final piece in the puzzle was that he hadn't seen Jason since 1995. The man shared pictures of his friend Jason that bore striking resemblance to Grateful Doe. Soon after, mainstream media picked up the story, and a woman named Margarita Evans came forward saying that that was her son, Jason Callahan, who had been missing for almost 20 years. Mrs. Evans had not filed a missing report in those 20 years, and
imagine that, bro. It reads, "Oh my God, this is my son, Jason Callahan from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I've been looking for him all this time with no luck," bro. That's chilling for a parent to, you know what I'm saying? It sucks that she has to find out this way, but at least she gets closure. And some of these social sites and some of this social media stuff like Facebook, Instagram, different things like that, they could be used for good, such as this. It ain't always got to be negative, you know what I mean? But it could be used for good, such as this. And look what it just did. Please inbox a message or phone number to contact me.
Years. Mrs. Evans had not filed a missing report in those 20 years, and she said she hadn't done so because she wasn't sure which jurisdiction to file the report given the nomadic lifestyle of her son. The entire Callahan family had presumed that he had gone on to live in some other town on his own. On the 12th of January 2015, after almost 20 years since his ghastly accident with Michael Eric Hager, Jason Callahan's mom filed a missing persons report for her son for the very first time. For the first time in 20 years, Jason Callahan was reunited with his family, and for the first time in 20 years, Jason Callahan could rest in peace without the fear of being forgotten.
Closure. That mom finally got her closure for her child that's been missing for Like again, you know, I was saying earlier, stress. That stress, what that stress does to you, man. It'll have you looking older than you actually are. You know what I mean?
William Earl Moult. At the age of 40, William Earl Moult was a mortgage broker who led a very bland life that was based on a predictable routine. Part of that routine included him frequenting a bar in Lantana, Florida. William was not known to be a heavy drinker. In fact, he rarely drank, and whenever he was at the bar, he would brood, keeping to himself as he spent time on his own, alone. On the 7th of November, 1997, after spending some time at the bar, William got up to leave around 11 p.m. A witness would later say that he did not appear drunk before he left the club. William's girlfriend would report that he had called her around 9:30 p.m. to say he would arrive home soon enough. However,
look, man, y'all know we got to switch it up sometimes, right? Stop going to the same place, allowing people to get your routine down. You know what I mean? Switch it up sometimes. If you're going to the same, go to a different one, do different. Don't go the same time. Switch it up. So I feel like, I don't know why I got that feeling with this story. It's like people learn your routine. And that's how they get the drop on you sometimes, because they know a lot of people like structure. And they're going to do it same time. This time you like to go on this day. And this how long you're going to stay. You're not going to drink much. All this type of stuff like that.
William would not make it home that night, nor was he seen ever again. When he did not arrive home, he was reported missing, and the police tried their best to search for him, but without clues or leads, it seemed like he had just vanished off the surface of the earth. Investigations proved impossible to pursue, and with time, the case grew cold. More than 20 years passed before a former resident of the Grand Isle housing development in Wellington, Florida, decided to take a look at their old neighborhood on Google Maps and noticed what looked like a car in a retention pond. The former resident phoned the current resident of the house, a man named Barry Fay, that there was a car submerged in the pond behind his house, along with screenshots that served as photo evidence.
This is crazy, bro. You know, people sit around and be looking at Google Maps and to come across something like this and say, wow, that looks weird, and it end up being something significant as this? That's crazy. That's like, woo. Like, when did that become a thing to just like sit around and look at? I never knew that until I started checking out some of these videos and seeing that people would just go on Google Maps and see what they can find. I didn't know that became a thing.
Faye got home, went to the pond to give it a check, but found nothing, so he called the neighbor. Interestingly, his neighbor had a drone and a camera, and by the time they recovered footage, it showed that there was indeed a car submerged in a retention pond. Faye immediately contacted the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, and the vehicle was pulled out of the water. When it was retrieved, it was found to be heavily calcified, and skeletal remains were found within the vehicle. The vehicle, along with the bones, were taken to the county medical examiner's office for processing, and after a week, they were identified as belonging to William Earl Moult. It so happened that the vehicle had been visible on Google Maps since 2007, approximately 10 years after his disappearance, but no one had noticed until 2019. Reports found that William, while returning from the club, might have lost control of his vehicle and crashed into the pond, which led to his death and subsequent disappearance. And even though the surrounding was under construction at the time, no one realized or noticed the vehicle throughout the construction process. After almost 22 years of pain, longing, and suffering, William's family was reunited with him. Even though dead, they got the closure that they deserved. Thanks for sticking around to the end.
Wow, that's crazy. He could have had a medical attack. You know what I'm saying? That sent him off the road like that. You could have had a medical episode. You know, you can't, but you still can't rule out that somebody did something to him, and that as well. So I'm pretty sure they still gonna be trying to look into the case, but at least the family got some sort of closure, man. You know what I mean? So, but look, man, y'all can't. Next time you be like, that internet, I can't stand it. It has some good, just like everything else, man, including people. Some good, some bad, you know? And when it does things like this, sometimes it justifies a little bit of the bad, you know what I mean? It makes it, okay, I just gotta know where to stay away from on the internet. But to be able to solve and give these families a mom after 20 years closure with her son, it makes it worth it, in my opinion. You know what I mean? But y'all get at me in the comment section. Let me know what you think and stick around and stay tuned, man, until the next one I'm gone. Peace.